Okay.
Good afternoon and welcome to Global Kinship, Exploring the Emerging Noosphere. We are a monthly webinar sponsored by Creation Spirituality Communities. Your hosts are Penny Andrews, Bob Eisenberger, and myself, Gail Ransom. Today, we are pleased to welcome Gail Worcelo to lead us in envisioning our future. Saying the word noosphere can feel awkward. But if you think of the word know as in knowing, as in understanding that goes beyond fact to include meaning, wisdom, character, and purpose, then the word noosphere might come alive for you as an image of a sphere of knowing. The noosphere was first noticed and named by Pierre Teilhard de Chardin and Vladimir Vernadsky 100 years ago. As a paleontologist, Teilhard observed how humanity progressed from hunter-gatherers and primitive tribes to the great philosophers, musicians, poets, and interactive culture of his day. How did this happen? What was next? 100 years later, we can answer that. A rise in population and migration, the interplay of cultures, scientific discoveries, medicine, media, and technology. As we often say, our children are so much taller and smarter than we are. The next generation is building a kind of global kinship, which we could not imagine when we were their age. It happens simultaneously, like a rising from our collective subconscious or an inspiration from the cosmic mind within which we live. To participate in this meeting of the minds, we need to pay attention to what is happening both inside and outside of us. And that's why we are here. We are exploring the emerging noosphere. We look forward to sharing this quest with you on the first Thursday of each month. Thank you and welcome.
Now, my mouse is misbehaving. I'm sorry. So let me simply speak from the small square for a moment. I'm going to take just a moment, please, to let everyone know about an exciting new opportunity that we all have to stay in touch during the month, between the first Thursdays of each month. Creation Spirituality Communities has implemented a brand new platform for communication that is safe, secure, private between us. And I'm just going to take 2 minutes to show you that so that we can begin the conversation. So it begins by logging into Creation Spirituality Communities, a website, cscommunities.org. And if you notice at the top center of the screen, it's a little off center here now because I've enlarged the screen for visibility. There's a place where you can either join, or once you've joined, then the successive visits will be to log in. And once we have done that, the very first time that we're entering into this space, it's going to ask us to choose a plan because there's a couple of different ways you can participate. And when you click on that link, it's going to show you the 4 various plans. Of great interest to many of us, I'm quite sure, is the free membership. But if you want to support Creation Spirituality Communities financially, you have several options to do that. Whichever plan you choose, it's going to ask you to just name yourself and set up a password to get into the system. Again, this part is only the first time you log in. And then you'll be taken into this communications platform. And you might, as you begin to use it, notice a real similarity to the Facebook platform, which I'm sure many of us are familiar with. And you'll notice that on the left side of the screen, there's a menu down here for groups to pick the group that you want to participate in. There are several set up for CS communities, and of our particular interest right now is Global Kinship. And you'll see an ongoing series of postings here. We're hoping that many of you will choose to participate here because it's an exciting opportunity to stay in touch with the ideas that are raised, to talk about the speakers that we've heard, to ask each other questions, to share resources you might have found. And so, and we'll talk about this. I'll tell you briefly at the end about how you might participate. In particular, the thing you might find exciting to reason to log in to share this resource. The other thing that I've been asked to note is just a reminder about our technical protocol. We ask everyone to keep yourself muted, please, which I think everybody is at this moment. Thank you. Unless you're asking a question, and that will keep it safe for the rest of us, and we allow our speaker to speak uninterrupted. At Q&A time, if you would simply note the reactions button on your Zoom toolbar if you have a question, which usually for PCs and Macs at least will be at the bottom of your screen. The reactions button, and select raise hand, and that will put you in line at the top left of the screen so that we know you have a question to ask. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Penny to introduce our speaker for today.
Good afternoon. Hello all from all parts of the globe. We are so lucky today to have Gail joining us. She holds a degree in Christian spirituality and clinical psychology and is a choreographer of liturgical dance.
Because I was the skinniest, scrawniest kid. Nobody picked me for anything, but then I knew how to draw cartoons and then they respected me.
Oh,
She
somebody.
is-
Sorry, I'm checking. There are a couple of people who were not muted. Sorry.
Okay, all right.
She's the co-founder, along with Bernadette Bostwick and the late Passionist priest Thomas Berry, of an emerging community, the Sisters of Earth, at Green Mountain Monastery in northern Vermont. A champion for the teachings of Thomas Berry and Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, Gail is a former Passionist nun who was taught by Thomas Berry during her novitiate in 1984. She continued the journey with Thomas, and with his support and guidance, the Green Mountain Monastery was born. Here's a quote that I think will set the day up beautifully. She writes, "I think Teilhard de Chardin sums up our experience in these words. There is almost a sensual longing for communion with others who have a large vision. The immense fulfillment of the friendship between those engaged in furthering the evolution of consciousness has a quality impossible to describe." And so I look forward to an afternoon that might be impossible to describe, but fully able to embody and delight. Gail, welcome.
Thank you so much, Penny. Thank you to Gail and to Bob for your help and for your welcome, and also to each of you for attending this session together, which I hope will be a beautiful inquiry into the topic, the theme. I think when Gail began, Gail, you said something like, "What's next?" You used those words, "What's next?" And I thought, yes, that is the question that's inherent in the theme that we're going to be exploring, which is beyond the noosphere, awakening to our next evolutionary potential. And that feels really exciting to me to actually, I'm just really presenting this for the first time, this idea of what could be beyond the noosphere. So we'll be engaging in this exploration together. And I want to just, let's just give you an outline of how I would like to proceed. So I recently got my certificate in a level 1 of a particular type of Qigong called Ren Shui. And the basis of this always and everywhere is to do a preparation before you get into the actual act of the material. So I am all for doing preparations before we just dive in, because we come from different places and different experiences. Some of you have been working and others have been traveling perhaps. So I'd like to begin with an attunement. And the attunement is basically going to be, it's taken from the Sufi tradition, and it's has to do with the purification breaths around the elements of earth, air, water, and fire. So I'm going to put up a slide with the title of our theme so that we can attune to the theme, embodying it through, as we begin this preparation, through the breath, through the body, through the mind, and through the heart, so that we're in all centers as we do this. Yes, after the breath, I'm going to play a little bit of music following the breath that will pull us into the theme again. It's a preparation. After that, we're going to move into this inquiry into beyond the noosphere, awakening our next evolutionary potential. And then I'm going to jump in and stretch our imaginations and explore what I'm meaning by this. So that's the second part. The third part, we're going to get into the work of Thomas Berry with the question in mind, well, how has Thomas Berry's work, how is his work instrumental in bringing forth this new layer of evolution and evolutionary potential? And in that section, which is going to be really the body of the content, I'm going to go into 4 key elements of the thinking of Thomas Berry that can potentially pave our way into this new emergence that I'll get into. And then finally, if we have time, we're going to look at what Thomas Berry calls awakening the shamanic dimension of ourselves. And Thomas Berry says that when our cultural coding no longer has the capacity to guide us forward, we need to touch into a deeper coding. And he calls that coding our genetic coding, or the deeper spontaneities within ourselves. And that is inclusive of the non-ordinary, the trans-rational, that which goes beyond the linearity of the mind. So that is going to be the context, and it's all going to be filling in to the theme of our inquiry together, which is beyond the noosphere, awakening to our next evolutionary potential. Okay, so let's begin by just, coming into your body, remembering that you are a body, you have a body, and just in a comfortable position, feel your feet on the floor. I'm going to put up an image that I want to have before us as we do the elemental breath exercise. Okay. Okay, now can you hear me? Somebody, Bob, can you hear me?
Yes,
You'll be
loud
my
and clear.
point person.
Yes, we
Lovely.
do.
Okay, thank you. So as we begin with the breath exercise, you could close your eyes, and we're going to begin with an in-breath. In through the nose and out through the mouth. And in through the nose and out through the mouth. And continue with this breath. This is the breath of water, where we're going in through the nose and out through the mouth. And these 4 breaths that I'm going to do with you are related to the nervous system and to the relaxation of the nervous system. In through the nose and out through the mouth. And moving to the next breath, the breath of fire, which is in through the mouth and out through the nose. So in through the mouth, out through the nose. In through the mouth, out through the nose. And just do that a few times on your own. In through the mouth and out through the nose. In through the mouth, out through the nose. Moving from here, we go into the earth element, and breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. And in through the nose and out through the nose. And in through the nose, out through the nose. And one more time. And then finally, we move to the breath of air, breathing in through the mouth, out through the mouth. And in through the mouth. And out through the mouth. In through the mouth. Out through the mouth. And take a few more of those on your own. Just deepening into the theme. And then come back into your own breath. And then listen.
Long before the night was born from the darkness, long before the dawn rolled unsteady from fire, long before she wrapped her scarlet arms around the hills, there was a love, this ancient love was born. Long before the grass spotted green the bare hillside, long before a wing unfolded to wind, long before she wrapped her long blue arm around the sea, there was a love, this ancient love was born. Long before a chain was forged from the hillside, long before a voice uttered freedom's cry, long before she wrapped her bleeding arms around a child, there was a love, this ancient love was born. Long before the name of God was spoken, long before a cross was nailed from a tree, long before she laid her arm of colors across the sky, there was a love, this ancient love was born. Wakeful are our nights and slumbers our morning. Stubborn is the grass, sowing green wounded hills. As we wrap our healing arms to hold what her arms held, this ancient love, this aching love rolls on.
So the question is, as we begin and enter our theme, how is this aching love rolling on in you? How does it feel in you right now? This aching love, this ancient love. Maybe a few of you can access that.
I feel full.
Yes, Kathleen.
I feel overwhelmed by awe and humility.
Yes, just jump in, Marianne. And unmute.
I feel connected to before and now and what's coming.
Mm, thank you.
Feel blessed.
And I feel in the present. I feel in the present moment with you all now.
I can't get enough of learning more.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
I'm feeling a deep peace
Mm.
that extends way beyond.
Lovely. Yeah, jump in. Bruce.
Tears behind the eyes.
Tears. Thank you. Thank you. So holding this ancient love will carry us through our exploration now. I'm going to share the screen again. And we're going to take the theme in again, beyond the newest sphere, awakening to our next evolutionary potential. And during our time, we're going to begin. I want to begin just by bringing Thomas Berry forward. So we're taking Thomas Berry, and I'm going to be exploring that intersection between Teilhard de Chardin, who spoke to us and gave us that word of the newest sphere, and Thomas Berry, who gave us the phrase, the ecozoic, or house of life. But for this purpose, I just want you to get some felt sense that I'm sharing my sense with you. I don't know if you have this, but there is a little transition. So there is something from that newest sphere, Thomas Berry's new articulation that may potentially offer something into what might be next, what can possibly be beyond the newest sphere, our next emergence. And this is what I've been thinking about for the past year and a half, around this theme of how Teilhard de Chardin, he saw the necessity of naming a new layer of thought, which emerged from the biosphere. And the biosphere, as we know, is the part of Earth with life, land, water, and atmosphere. And Teilhard knew that this new layer of thought, which was emerging from the biosphere, went beyond the biosphere, and that it had abilities and properties that the biosphere did not have and could not develop on its own. So we have these spheres, the geosphere, the biosphere, and now this Teilhardian notion of the newest sphere. And on your website, I think it was your website, I saw that beautiful video by Brian Swim on mapping the newest sphere. So for those of you listening who don't have a sense of the newest sphere, you might go to the Global Kinship website and touch into this. But we're touching in a little bit to it today. So the newest sphere held for Teilhard that unifying vision, right, of where we might go, some sort of connection through technology, a sphere of consciousness that's running through the planet, and this sense of this unifying vision that Teilhard saw as possible. And we have this from the Greek words, right? We have these words are coming from Greek, the lithosphere, with lithos meaning rock or hard, the Earth's hard surface. And then we have the hydrosphere, which is the layer of water, the hydro for water, atmos for air, bios for life. And then finally, we have this noosphere, the layer of thought, or the mind sphere that Teilhard spoke about. So we feel in ourselves these layers of existence and of experience, and they transcend and include. So once we have a layer awakening, a planetary layer, physical or otherwise awakening, there is this notion or sense of nothing's lost. A thing is just transcended, and then the rest are included in the process. So the question here is there another evolutionary layer pressing to emerge? So you might think about that right now. Jot it down in your own sense of things. Do you think there is another evolutionary layer pressing to emerge? And if you do, just jot it down. I'll give you just a few seconds to consider. And if there is a new evolutionary layer pressing to emerge, it needs a name. So as we saw from before, a new layer is going to have new abilities and new properties, that the noosphere by itself does not possess, just like the biosphere did not have the properties that the noosphere possesses. So there will be another layer of another emergence that needs a name. That's something that's pressing to emerge beyond the biosphere. So I'd like to give it a name for your consideration. And this could potentially, we could just use this as a stretch of the imagination. So what if the cardiosphere or the heart sphere is the next emergent layer? And cardia also comes from the Greek meaning heart, or the heart sphere. And perhaps if we considered the cardiosphere, it could be a layer for all activities of the human heart, rather than all the activities of the human mind, which the noosphere seems to encompass. Not imagining this as mutually exclusive. So we have an integrated sense of the totality of mind, heart, body, right? The integration. But what if there is a specific new layer that we could call the cardiosphere that's pressing to emerge? Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is because I want to present to you, and I was asked to present to you Thomas Berry and the thinking of Thomas Berry. And because I've been reflecting on his thinking for many, many years, these are some of his, below are some of his core ideas some of which I'm going to present to you today. And I wonder, could these awakening of these ideas that he presented be foundational or be on some living edge of a new emergence, which we could call the cardiosphere? So Thomas talked about things like mutual indwelling, intersubjective communion, a recovery of a sense of the sacred, physical, spiritual dimensionality of the universe, and selfless love. So we could just consider those aspects. And those are functions of a different faculty. They're not necessarily the thinking faculty. These are functions, I think, of perhaps the heart faculty, the faculty for different capacity. Now, Teilhard labeled the layer of thought the noosphere. So perhaps the cardiosphere is a new layer of the feeling sense, the selfless love awakening throughout the planet, or the planetary heart. So I want to leave you with this, because this is, I would like you to hold this thought. I'm going to stop the share for 1 minute. Yeah, just ask you to, as you consider the cardiosphere, does it have any resonance? Can you at least stretch your imagination in that direction to think that this might be a possible new emergence here? And it's so, to me, it's so exciting. It has some kind of resonance of this potentiality of breaking open into a new possibility for our humanity and the Earth community with this perhaps dimensionality that maybe we haven't considered before, or maybe we have. So anyone would like to just tell me, how is cardiosphere landing in you? How does it land in you?
I would like to say, Gail, I don't know if you can hear me, that I
hear.
It is perfect, because I listened to, is it John Hott one time, and he talked about something similar. And I had this feeling when we all are united as one in love. And it linked up for me with you in Antarshuk in Ireland. I once followed your retreat there, and you talked about mysticism. And I think, I don't know why, it seems to connect just, and it comes to me that somehow could be connected. I don't know if you're going to talk about Venuses this evening, but this wonderful kind of a love embracing the universe, or all of us embracing the universe in love and one another.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to also just mention, about a year and a half ago, I heard a speaker, and I think you might know Louis Savary. He has written a number of books on Teilhard de Chardin for the layperson, to help lay people really get Teilhard. And he for me was the first person I heard the word from, cardiosphere. And I don't know if anyone really heard him say that in the talk I heard. I'm not sure, because no one really mentioned it again. And that was a year and a half ago, but I've been pondering it for a year and a half. So the word I did hear it first from Louis Savary. And he was asking the same question: could there be something beyond the noosphere? So yeah, anyone else would like to say something? And then I'd like to go into Thomas Berry a bit, and we'll return back. We'll go back and forth into this inquiry.
Marianne Warmhoff has.
Oh yes, Marianne, go ahead.
Yeah, quickly. This takes me. Even Teilhard spoke of when he said man, but he meant us. When we rediscover the power of love, then it's like discovering fire for the second time. So he spoke of it.
Yes.
I think that as things like it evolves, that he talked about man, and now we know to use the word human or all people, that there was an evolution of the noosphere too, as in the 100 years since he first said it. And that for me, it includes a heartness. It includes, when you talk about consciousness, when we become conscious of each other, we want to be more gentle with each other. For me, it's the heart. I'm happy to have another layer full of heart, but I think the heart is also part in the noosphere, as I understand it.
Yes. Yeah, I want to, Gail, I want to just mention what's coming up in me when you said that is, yeah, I think it is inside the noosphere. And at the same time, what's coming up is, I remember, early on in the Catholic Church, the language was not inclusive. So it would be like, for us men and for our salvation. And then the men would say, well, the women are included in the men, and then the language got shifted. So now it would be for us men and women and for our salvation, or, the language was tweaked a little bit. So it's like, even though the cardiosphere is in the noosphere, I wonder if bringing it forward as another layer would, I don't know, would stir some things up, that make some things possible that are not possible now. But let's see, let's explore this together. That's what we're here for.
Well, the noosphere is definitely born out of the biosphere. So it's happening while the biosphere is sphering. So
yes,
they all grow out of each other.
Yes. And then we're including them all in the next layer. So, okay, what I'd like to...
Mary Ellen's had her hand up. I'm sorry, Mary Ellen.
Oh, sorry.
Unmute yourself, Mary Ellen, please.
This is Phil Waldrop. I'm just thinking, as one of the activities of the new heart sphere, cardiosphere, is kind of a compassionate cooperation with each other. We cooperate compassionately, and that's a heart-based action. I've been thinking about cooperation in cooperatives and other entities, and that strikes me today. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That would certainly be a dimension of the cardiosphere.
Go ahead, Mary Ellen.
No, I just wanted to say briefly, Gail, when you mentioned cardiosphere, I thought I've heard that before. And then when you said about Louis Savary, I thought that's it. I had been at something in which he was presenting and he spoke of it, and I loved it. And to me, it also brings me to Thomas Berry's mutual indwelling of this one love that we're inside of, and it's inside of us. But it also, I make an association with Cynthia Bourgeault's wisdom tradition of seeing with the eyes of the heart or hearing with the ears of the heart. It's a whole different way of being in relationship and seeing beyond, seeing the divine in all. So I thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Big Barbara and Marita have their hands up. Yeah, Barbara.
Tying into what she just said, the thought that came to my mind was Sophia's sphere, that coming out of mind and thought, there needs to be a little sidestep to wisdom. So I kind of thought of a Sophia's sphere.
Oh, beautiful. Lovely. Thank you. Marita.
Here I am.
Oh, there you are.
I think in this era, we have so many people starving. We have so many people, 800,000 who don't even have access to clean water. We have we're on the edge of a third world war. And if we ever needed a cardiosphere, it is now, to share all that we have, to look at each other and know that somehow, Christ is in that other person, if it's Putin or whoever it is, and just, we just have to come to peace and love and share all that we have. It's the only way we'll survive.
Thank you, Marita. Does anyone else? One more? Gertie?
Yes, thank you.
Gertie?
Well, I was thinking that we're seeing it all around us. Like when we think about the movement against racism, loving one another of all different peoples around the world. And also with the connection to nature, the love of nature, indigenous people. I mean, it's just kind of bursting all around us, this love, this heart center. So I think you're just naming what's already evolving, coming through in our time right now.
Yes, absolutely. It's coming through. And the exciting thing is what else can happen as we unleash it and go forward together with the Earth community.
Yeah, thank you.
So thank you so much. Let's move on to Thomas Berry. So I want to, segue and integrate Thomas Berry into this dimension of the cardiosphere. And let's talk about Thomas Berry a bit. Thomas Berry, in 1992, Thomas Berry was considered a wild monk on the cosmic fringe of the Passionist congregation to which both he and I belonged. And I mentioned 1992 because it was the year of my own final profession of vows in that same order. And I had been studying with Thomas since 1993 during my novitiate. Thomas Berry had his Riverdale Center for Religious Research in the Bronx, New York. And that was the great red oak tree under which he wrote the book, The Dream of the Earth, and dedicated his book to this tree. As a student of Thomas Berry, there was one thing that he emphasized and told all his students, and that was you have to know the context. So in 1994, Thomas Berry wrote a chapter, a paper called Women Religious, the Voice of Earth. And in that paper, he said that historically speaking, women religious have founded communities throughout the ages to address the needs of the human community through education or healthcare or social work, etc. But never was there a community founded that would be dedicated to Earth's healing and protection. and he delivered that to a group of the highest body of leadership in the world, called the Union International of Superiors General in Rome. He delivered that in 1994, and I happened to have the paper that he shared with me. I really don't know if anyone there even knew what he was talking about. But in 1994, that sparked my imagination with him. And I said to him, well, why don't we do it? So in the year 2000, myself and Bernadette Bostwick, along with Thomas Berry, co-founded Sisters of the Earth community. So I think we are the first community of Catholic sisters in the Catholic Church dedicated and founded specifically for Earth. And we like to say, we're an interspecies, multicultural, and bioregional community. And when people ask, well, how many are in your community? We say innumerable. We cannot count the members that are part of the land and part of our that make up who we are. And so we're located in Greensboro, Vermont, and we're a sanctuary as well, Thomas Berry Sanctuary. And so, and I put these three principles, this is the principles that are on our sign. And I think these are from Thomas Berry. I'd like to talk to you about these a little bit later. But these three principles at the heart of the thinking of Thomas Berry, I think will also be at the heart of the cardiosphere. They will have to be explicated out, exploded out, and really live by us and the future of the future humans with the Earth community in order for us to go further as a planetary community. So I think many of you know that Thomas Berry was a cultural historian and a Teilhardian scholar who called himself a geologian. And with this term, he saw himself as a human who emerged out of eons of universe time, as well as eons of geological and biological evolution. And in 1978, he wrote the book, the paper, the New Story. And in that paper, it was a seminal paper. And he was questioning the place where we are at, this in-between point. And he said his first line is that we're in between stories. The old story is no longer functional, but we have not lived into a new story yet. And one of the things that Thomas Berry was certain of was that we were to position our thinking within the cosmological context by understanding ourselves as cosmological beings, that we emerge out of the spirituality of the fireball, and that the only way we could have a spirituality or be spiritual is because the fireball itself contained within itself a deep spirituality.
He wanted to walk.
So Thomas Berry again spoke about context. Know your place, know where you're located. And these two books, The Dream of the Earth and The Great Work, are seminal pieces for the cardiosphere, for the emerging cardiosphere. Even the title, Dream, the dream comes from a different function. The dream of the earth, the intuitive, the shamanic, the non-rational. He speaks of all of this in that volume, The Dream of the Earth. And he offers a key directive to us, in which this is a line from him that I think is going to take us a long time to probe, to actually understand that the universe and Earth is a communion of subjects, not a collection of objects. And he says if we don't understand that, nothing's going to matter. Let's listen to him in his own words.
We've gone mad, stark raving mad, destroying the planet. But more specifically, We're terminating the last 65 million years of life development. We don't understand the earth as a sacred reality. The trees as sacred, the rivers, the mountains. The universe, in particular the planet Earth, is a communion of subjects, not a collection of objects. If we don't learn that, nothing's gonna work.
Thomas Berry is a multitude of things, something like looking at a mosaic or looking at a rose window with many petals and many colors coming through it. So he's a monk and a priest out of the Catholic tradition. He is an intellectual, an academic, a professor. He's also a writer and a geologian who's put together a comprehensive story of our journey in the universe.
One of the great contributions that Thomas made to my life, he named what was the essential discovery, and that was that the universe is fundamentally story. And when he said that, all that I had learned in geology or astronomy or biology came together in a single pattern of story.
Last night, the moon was shining on this wonderful bay. And I asked the moon, what should I say? And the moon said, tell them the story. And I asked the wind, what should I say? It said, tell them the story. And I asked the clover out on the lawn, what should I say?
Nosy dog.
The clover said, tell them the story.
Checking
My
you
story.
out.
The mountain story, the river story, your story, the Indian story, the great story.
So with that short context of Thomas Berry within the communion of subjects, Earth as a communion of subjects, I would like to share two images from his childhood that shaped his cosmovision. And one was an experience of revelation, and the other was an experience of violation. So you may have read in his book, The Great Work, he talks about his experience of crossing a meadow, crossing a creek and going up to a meadow. And in the meadow, he sees these white lilies. And he has this experience of the presence of the divine at that moment. He was a boy of about maybe 8 or 10. And he has this experience of the presence of the divine manifesting itself in the field of white lilies. And I tend to think of it as, an experience of geophany. He experiences the presence of the divine revealing itself in the materiality of the earth, in a sense, like the incarnation of the divine in matter. And he dedicates himself. That experience shaped his whole orientation for his life work. He dedicated himself to the meadow, actually. And the meadow became for him an archetype of the earth community. And he said, my orientation is this simple. Whatever protects the meadow and its natural cycles is good, and whatever harms the meadow is not good. And of course, he developed that in much more complex strides. He talked about a good jurisprudence would protect the meadow, and a good education would learn from the meadow, and a good religion would celebrate the meadow. That orientation of meadow as archetype. So that experience shaped his cosmovision, and that was an experience of revelation. He also had an experience of violation of the community of life. So when Thomas, also as a young boy, maybe 10 years old, growing up in the hills of North Carolina, he would run barefoot on the dirt roads and through the fields and woods until one day the trucks came in and tarred all of the roads with black asphalt. And as a result, he was no longer able to run barefoot as the tar was too hot and would burn his feet. And the tar actually just rolled over the beings, the flowers, the grasses, the insects, those beings in the community of life that he was participating with as a young child. And he experienced that tarring over of all those beings, both physically and metaphorically. And he said that from that moment on, I dedicated my life, he said, to a critique of the industrial era and a recovery of a sense of the sacred. And any place you look in Thomas's work, you will see the notion of the sacred. So it will be like around the theme of a recovery of a sense of the sacred, the wild and the sacred. We dwell in a sacred universe. Each being is sacred, a single sacred community. So to understand, this was like the drive shaft of his work, this theme, this orientation of that recovery of a sense of the sacred. And it seems to me that this would be a core element of the cardiosphere, the capacity for our recovery of a sense of the sacred. And I just wanted to share this, thinking about his experiences, those two experiences of revelation and violation. And thinking about my own experience and in this regard and or in terms of the sacred. And I remember when I was 6 years old, I was looking at my hand and asking the question, well, what does it mean to be me? And as I probed the question and kept pushing into it, I had a sudden collapse of the self into the totality, a sense of no separation between me and existence. So the answer to the question was a collapse of separation or duality, and just some sense of the oneness of totality and the ineffable love that pulses through all of life. And I really became super sensitive to this notion of the divine revelation within each subjectivity of the universe. And I was concerned with a world almost in complete denial of this mystery within all, permeating the deep interior of all, and seeing too how life was being paved over one subjectivity at a time with the metaphorical tar and asphalt. And I wanted to dedicate myself to bear witness to divinity permeating all of reality. And I kind of have spent my life in that direction of that bearing witness to the penetration and the permeation of divinity in reality, all of reality. So I wanted to ask you now, come back to you. So we're talking about a recovery of a sense of the sacred as a dimension of the cardiosphere. And I wonder for you, what does that mean? What does a recovery of a sense of the sacred mean for you? How has that woken up in your own life? How do you experience that recovery of a sense of the sacred? And also the second question is, what has been tarred over in your own experience? What has been tarred over? So there's two questions I just want to float in the space, just see if you get a little sense of it for you. In your own experience, what has been tarred over in your relationship to either yourself or the community of life? And have you had an experience where you've woken up to a recovery of a sense of the sacred? Anyone would like to share? Jump in.
My hand. All right. I don't have a yellow hand, but
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Mayor.
yeah. Well, I think we are so caught in a capitalistic system that truly prevents, in so many ways, true care for each other. Most people are trying to earn a living to raise their family or to feed themselves or to pay their rent. And so what tars us over is the responsibilities of trying to survive. And I think there are very few areas where people have come together in community to try to combat that. But in general, most people are trapped in a society that does not allow us to care for each other in real ways. And as far as what happened to me about 30 years ago, as I was driving, and in front of me there was a pickup truck, and the light seemed to change. My memory is that the light was, it seemed to get golden around my view, and I saw the pickup truck in front of me. It had two men. They were wearing baseball caps and they had rifles on their window in the back of them. And my judgment was immediately that they were not good people. That was my judgment call, that they were rednecks, that they were dangerous. All of a sudden, without cognition, my perception changed. I started to cry, and I knew I would die for them. I knew that they were beyond judgment, that we both were beyond judgment, that we were both precious beyond any words that I could give it. Now, of course, that didn't last, and my judging mind is still with me, but I'll never, ever forget what that was like. It affected my whole life.
Thank you.
And I know that's true vision. I know that's true vision. Not just for me, that's true vision.
Yes, it's part of the field, our own field. What is for one is for the whole. Yeah, Catherine, do you have something, or Catherine and Nancy? One of you jump in?
Yes, for me, becoming more aware of the sacred of everything and our connection with everything happened as I learned more about Indigenous spirituality and how a lot of the Indigenous people consider everything family. And things that I would call things, they are all called beings to them. And Robin Wall Kimmerer certainly had a big effect on me as I read her book, particularly Braiding Sweetgrass, with how far we've come in our objectivity away from that subjectivity that Barry's talking about.
Yes. I want to just build on that regarding Thomas Berry. And my, the story I just told you before of having this experience of looking at my hand and then collapsing into, the totality, which I, of course, couldn't say at 6 years old, but was able to articulate that experience later. But as a result of that experience, I felt the life pulse and the life force in every being from a very early age. So much so that when I was with a bunch of kids, if they were going to step on an ant or something, I would muster up all my energy, push them away and push them off, because I really couldn't bear the thought of that life breath, that life pulse of the mystery pulsing through even an ant, snuffing out the subjectivity of that being. And Thomas Berry, I want to just read a sentence that he wrote He wrote this in the book. Let's see, the title of the book was, I think, All Small Creatures, but he wrote, it's in relationship to insects. He put, Earth is a communion of subjects, not a collection of objects. We find such thoughts attractive until we think of insects. Immediately, we become ambivalent. We react to them in fear, project onto them our own desire for dominance, etc. And so he said to speak of a comprehensive compassion toward all insects is indeed challenging. And he goes on. But in this forward to the book, he really puts a challenge to the niceties of some of his statements, like Earth is a communion of subjects. It sounds nice on paper, but then what happens when we're to put this into effect? Yes, would anyone else, one more or two before we move on? Anyone? Oh, Margie, go ahead, and Nancy.
Thanks, Gail. Just a quick one around relationality. I deliberately and intentionally now create at least every day 4 or 5 times 3 minutes to go out into Earth community and create relationship. And I'm saying it's one relationship at a time. I've now got 4 trees in my bioregion that I visit regularly. And yesterday at the end of deep time, Steve asked me to finish the day. And I said, what if we're all over the world. What if we all pull away from our Zoom call now and go outside, whether it's night or day, and namaste sky and wait for your response from the sky. And I think that's what's going on in me right now. I'm just loving what you're talking about.
Thank you. Yeah, those are the inklings into the cardiosphere, I think. That's another dimensionality of it. Nancy, go ahead. You have your hand up. I think Nancy, Valerie, are you there? So I see these hands
You mean
raised.
Victoria?
Valerie?
Because I've had my hand up for a while.
Oh, Victoria now. There's Victoria. Go ahead.
Yeah, when I think of what's been rolled over, it's one of the speakers before talks about indigenous spirituality. And it seems to me, from knowing a little bit about the spiritual practices here on the West Coast, and also from some of the Anishinaabe, they've always had this connection and connectedness, but they were rolled over by our religion. And the same thing in Africa, there were peoples there that had this, like before they chopped down a tree, they would ask the tree, and if the tree said no, they wouldn't chop it down. But when the colonials came, they didn't care for any of those things. They thought they were primitive. So I think what our modern and scholarly and supposedly superior conquering civilizations, they rolled over peoples and cultures that had this connectedness that now we're trying to get back.
Yes. Thank you, Victoria. Yes. Okay, let's move on. I'm going to just get back to Thomas now. We'll share the screen. Thank you for your sharing. Okay, so we're going to kind of now return back to Thomas again. Yes, so Thomas Berry has an interesting concept in which he says that we all are indigenous to the fireball. And he invites us to return to our indigenous roots in the initial flaring forth, in the fireball itself, the cosmic story. And he says we seldom go to those genetic or indigenous roots in the fireball, actually, for guidance and instruction. And again, when our cultural coding no longer has the capacity to guide us forward, when that coding has lost its integrity, a return must be made to our deeper knowing. And then he says, what is needed is not transcendence, but inscendence, a return to the deeper wisdom. An image that I appreciate so much as that takes us back to our genetic coding comes from my friend and gifted transmitter of the universe story, Miriam McGillis, and the ritual of the cosmic walk. So the cosmic walk, for those of you who don't know, is the 13.7 billion year story of the universe laid on the ground. It gets us into an immediate kinesthetic connection with that genetic coding or with our roots. So we start from the beginning at the center, which is the initial flaring forth, and we walk around this this spiral, and it's really can be integrated into any and every cultural and linguistic matrix. So just take in the image for a minute. And then that center of the initial flaring forth. So this cosmic walk is a important therapy for our healing and recovery of our sense of the sacred. It's a map, we could say, a map of our story. So now, influenced by Teilhard de Chardin, Thomas Berry highlights 4 dimensions, which we can call maybe the spine or the backbone of his cosmovision that has resonances for the cardiosphere. And I would like to go over these 4 key dimensions of the universe story that comes from Thomas Berry. He invites us into, the first is the understanding that we live in a time developmental universe. So basically he wants us to get a sense that we live in an unfinished universe, that it's a universe that's still coming to be. It's open to more. And it's an irreversible sequence of unfolding in which, as he says, the revelation of the mystery continues. So just for this moment, the first point of Thomas's thinking here is that felt sense that, wow, we're living in a unfinished universe, a universe that's coming to be. And we see that in the James Webb deep field, where we see these thousands of galaxies, every dot a galaxy at different distances and times in history. So some of these are 13.1 billion years away, and others are 4.6 billion years away. So we get this felt sense with the James Webb of a dynamic cosmos, or we could say a field of cosmogenesis. So that's his first point. It's time developmental, an unfinished universe. And the second of Thomas Berry's key ideas is that the universe is both physical and spiritual. We live in a psychic, spiritual universe. So basically, he's saying that evolution has an inner as well as an external unfolding. It's not just the outer world that's unfolding, but the deep interior as well. That means the interior has capacity for further evolution, evolutionary capacities. And then again, like with the James Webb telescope, we see this dimensionality of, this is a cartwheel galaxy, and it's impacted by another galaxy passing through. And as the galaxies pass through each other, star formation is possible. Gas is excited and new emergences happen. And Teilhard, as you know, says in his Divine Milieu that all elements of the universe touch each other by that which is most inward and ultimate in them. So that withinness of things. So Thomas Berry's referring to the withinness as well as the withoutness for his second point. His third point, which we've heard, is that the universe is a communion of subjects and not a collection of objects. And we get that, feel it in the James Webb Stephen quartet. This is 4 galaxies interacting in a cosmic embrace. And these galaxies are transforming through the relationality of each with each. And every red dot here are where new stars are being born. So in the interaction of the communion of subjects, new life emerges. And that's his third point. And then finally, Thomas Berry asks, where is the universe going? He says there's an innate directionality in the universe and that it is moving in 3 directions simultaneously. And I'm going to talk about these 3 dimensions, which I think are key to the cardiosphere. The universe is moving toward a greater differentiation, a deeper subjectivity, and more profound communion. So those are the 3 elements he's speaking about. And he called these 3 fundamental dynamics of the universe the footprints of God, because they are present everywhere and at all times in the cosmic process. And they identify the values through which the universe is proceeding. So we're going to just take these elements into ourselves and consider their unfolding, their importance for the cardiosphere. So I'm just going to like you to read this. Now take a look around your room. Just take your eyes away from the screen and just look around your room for a minute. Let's see what's around your room. Give your eyes a break. And just look around and now come back to the screen and read this again. Look up to your ceiling. And then down to the floor. Yeah, back to the screen. One more time. The second principle, let's read this and read this on your own. So you just take this in and just stand up for a minute. Just let your body to take this in. Stand up and give yourself a stretch. Take your eyes off the screen for a moment. And take a look at your own hands. And now read this again. And we're going to do a little bit of a movement. So just follow my direction. So with your hands, we're just going to do a little spin around like this. And we're going to say, all that surrounds me is sacred. So you repeat it after me. All that surrounds me is sacred. Now, from the earth, make a circle from the earth and raise your hands up to the heavens. From the waters to the fire. I salute all and all is one. One more time. All that surrounds me is sacred. From the earth to the heavens, from the waters to the fire, I salute all, and all is one. Now come to your screen and just take a look at this. Maybe if you're looking at your screen right now, look through your screen at someone in a box. Someone in the box, beyond the box. Look through and just see one subjectivity on your screen right now. Know it, know that one. And you pass through the screen into that other, subject to subject. You can't look at it, you can only realize your own location in other. And communion. So the cardiosphere invites us to the greatest differentiation we can imagine, the deepest subjectivity we can call forth, and the most intimate communion we could bear. So just switch your gears into, like maybe just move your head around and just kind of drop in like out of the head into this body that you are, into your body self. I'm going to show you images and words now without speaking. Just ask you to take it in just bodily. So if you need to stretch or move a little bit, go ahead as these come on your screen. First principle, differentiation. Violations of differentiation. Now, take a breath into that. You might look down and shift, move into this subjectivity. I was just in Kenya, and these are all recent photos. And so I'm just looking at the subjectivity inherent in the animal world and sharing that with you. This is my friend Dan. He's a Maasai man. Subjectivity. Here are the voices calling us. Recognize my subjectivity. So many voices rising today. Violations of subjectivity. And finally, our communion. And the violations of the communion, rampant loneliness and depression, aloneness. And Thomas Berry reminds us of the need to unravel that which is in violation. And in the shamanic tradition, it was called dismemberment, taking apart all that doesn't fit anymore, that doesn't work, and putting back together again, making new. And maybe that invitation to cardiosphere. And lastly, Thomas Berry, going to move through that. Oh, Thomas Berry asks us at the end, that question that we probably can carry with us now at the end of our time. What is Earth asking of us? What does Earth desire? Or what is the cardiosphere wanting of us? So however way we phrase the question, but I want to end with this poem that Thomas Berry wrote, and it's him reciting it. It's called Earth's Desire.
Called Earth's Desire. What does the Earth really want in relationship to ourselves? What was the Earth looking for when it brought us into being? And this is the answer to that question. call Earth's Desire. To be seen in her loveliness, to be tasted in her delicious fruits, to be listened to in her teaching, to be endured in the severity of her discipline, to be experienced as that maternal source whence we become the final destiny to which we return. It's that simple. That's simple. Here we have it. To be seen in her loveliness. To be tasted in her delicious fruits. To be listened to in her teaching. To be endured in the severity of her discipline. To be experienced as the maternal source whence we came. The destiny to which we return.
And with that, we close beautiful words of Thomas. We close our time together. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gail, so much. It was beautiful, very rich.
Very rich. Yes,
very
rich and beautiful,
Lovely.
inspiring,
Thank you.
comforting.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
And perhaps we can do what, turn our videos on and show our appreciation by a gesture or some word to Gail for her wonderful sharing today. And that will be our send off as we go away.
Thank you, Gail. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Blessings.
It was
Blessings.
wonderful.
Appreciate
it.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Thank you, Gail.
Bye.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Gail.
Yeah.
Blessings on your great work.